So Jordan has 8 consecutive titles in my personal record book. Olajuwon has none, and Kenny Smith never makes it to TNT. How about that?
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, and we've got my guy Stu Gatz from the Dan Le Batard Show, from God Bless Football. I've been telling everybody that would listen that myfrontpagestory.com is the greatest Father's Day gift ever. But Stu Gatz has a pretty good Father's Day gift idea as well, and some hilarious takes before we get to a couple intriguing signings. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Look at that. We got Kayvon Thibodeau over there trying to throw the ball through a hoop, and I got John Stugatz Wiener. Nobody knows you as John Wiener.
My kids call me Stu Gatz. I mean, my daughters do. Are they throwing what is going on? This is what Super Bowl and Radio Row is all about. We are next to a set of bounty where people are throwing footballs for 50, 100, and 500 points. So.
I definitely recognize Kayvon Thibodeau. I don't recognize Bobby. I'm not sure who Bobby is.
I don't know who it is
Bobby,
either.
I'm guessing, is another
It seemed like
player.
you were longing for Kayvon Thibodeau as opposed to having me on the show. That's what it seemed like.
I'd rather have you.
Okay.
It'd be way more entertaining, way more interesting.
Thank you.
You have a book, dude?
I can't
How do you
believe
have a
it.
book?
No one is more surprised
That's
about it
also
than me.
what the
Yes.
Super Bowl is about. By the way, this is probably airing in March while I'm skiing or in the summer while I'm at the beach. But at any
Right.
rate,
It's
I'm
evergreen.
talking to you here
Yeah.
at the Super Bowl. It's evergreen content.
Yes.
Stugat's personal record book. What is that about?
If you wouldn't mind, wait until maybe a week or two before Father's Day. Okay.
I can do that.
If you could do that for
Remind me.
If you can really stretch it out.
Yeah.
Or run it in March and then run it again before Father's Day.
I did it, and I'm not going to run it twice. But
Okay.
I did have Angelo Cataldi, my guy
Right.
from Philly. I had
Yes.
him come on and pitched it as a Father's Day book. Tell me about the book before I get into my other stuff.
So no one is more surprised that I wrote a book than I am. Okay. But Dan Stanzik, who is a former producer of mine over at ESPN, loves our show, loves my takes, loves the device, the sports radio device of my personal record book, where there's an actual record book, but in my personal record book, I will take certain championships away from certain people like Kevin Durant, okay? Because it's my record book. And it's sports and sports history according to how I see things.
Right.
So think about it with Michael Jordan. Imagine if Jordan, who couldn't beat, when he couldn't beat the Pistons, rather than come back and try again, imagine Michael just said, you know what? I can't beat that team. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to join that team. That's not what Michael would do. That's exactly what Kevin Durant did. He couldn't get past Oklahoma. Couldn't get past Golden State while playing for Oklahoma. So what did he do? He joined Golden State, a team that didn't need him, a team that won a title before he even arrived there. And so in my personal record book, Kevin Durant has 0 titles. He has never won an NBA title. He has no rings. And so Stanzik loved that take so much, and then I started putting all these takes that I had under the my personal record book umbrella, and Stanzik loved it so much that he calls me one day, and he says, listen, I have taken all of your takes. I have transcribed them to paper because Lord knows I would never do that, right? And he said, if we could just fill in around this, we're going to have ourselves a book. And so here we are. We have a book. He and I wrote a book. Le Batard wrote the foreword, and some of my friends in the media wrote rebuttals. And so if you're wondering why I didn't ask you, I am saving you for the second book. Okay?
Rebuttals. Give me an example of rebuttals.
So, I have crazy takes. Mina Kimes wrote a rebuttal. Stan Van Gundy wrote a rebuttal to a ridiculous NBA take I had. I think it was Durant one. We have Scott Van Pelt. There's plenty of people in there who wrote rebuttals to Tim Kirchin, to my ridiculous takes. Mina Kimes. And I got to tell you, for someone who does what I do and acts the way that I act, kind of like the court jester of Radio Row and sports radio, to call all these credible people or text them and ask them, hey, can you contribute to my book? And for them to write back within 15 seconds, Yes. With like big, like I'm honored. For me was the coolest part of the book. Like I am asking these credible people to do something free for me. Like I'm not going to pay them, and they were all happy and willing to do it. And so I think that's what really makes the book different and unique.
All right, so you got something here with the Philly special, which I think is really interesting. What's your issue with the Philly special since we're a football show?
The Philly special, what was that, the Nick Foles play?
Yes.
So the Philly special was Nick Foles does not deserve a Super Bowl ring. I mean, Carson Wentz does. So if you remember that season, right, everyone makes a big deal, Philly special this, Nick Foles that. I mean, give me a break, okay? Carson Wentz, I think they were 10-1, right? So Carson Wentz, I think for the first 11 games started, then he got hurt. Nick Foles came in. To their credit, they won a Super Bowl. But everyone, assigns it to Nick Foles. I don't. Nick Foles has never won a Super Bowl. Carson Wentz was the reason they won that Super Bowl.
You know what's so interesting
agree
about
with that? Do you think if Nick Foles started the season that year as the Eagles quarterback, they would have won a Super Bowl? No, that's ludicrous. It's ridiculous.
So, but you give it to Wentz though, even though he didn't play in any playoff games.
Of course, yes. No, Wentz got one regardless because he was on the team. What I do is take it away from Nick Foles.
Do you ever give championships to anybody?
No. Why would I just give a championship to somebody? I don't just give championships.
So all you do is you litigate who doesn't deserve it.
That's all I do, yes. Who has won championships that didn't really have anything to do with them winning championships?
So wait, you don't think that Nick Foles had anything to do with it?
No, Nick Foles played quarterback, right? But if Nick Foles starts his season and ends your season, your team's not going to be very good. Philadelphia didn't win anything because of Nick Foles. They got off to a good start with Carson Wentz. He should have been the MVP that season. And Nick Foles parlayed that into like a $70 million contract. Philly special, this, that call. Give me a break, okay? It's kind of like Jeff Hostetler. Remember when he filled in for Phil Simms? If you start the season with Jeff Hostetler as your starting quarterback, you're not going anywhere. And if you start a season with Nick Foles as your starting quarterback, you're not going anywhere. That's it.
So here's what's interesting about that.
What?
I'm curious about your take. I do the Eagles preseason games on TV, and I do a lot of stuff in Philly.
Yep.
Nick Foles is like a top 10, maybe top 5 beloved Philadelphia sports figure of all time.
That's absurd.
And Stugotz.
For what?
Carson Wentz, Monday night at media night.
But that's my point. Everyone forgets what Wentz did for them that season.
But Monday night at media night, because footage has come out of Wentz crying after the Super Bowl because he didn't play in the game or whatever. At media night, Monday night, Wentz was asked, "Will he come in 2027 for the 10-year anniversary?"
Right.
And he said, "I don't know."
Wow.
Because it didn't end well, and I don't know if he thinks he'd get a poor reception or if he just knows Nick Foles would get a much better reception. Your thoughts on how Philadelphia fans feel about Wentz and Foles?
It's interesting. The guy they should be celebrating for that season and that season alone is Carson Wentz. So
he was going to be MVP.
You could celebrate. He was going to be the MVP. You could celebrate both of them. I'm not saying what Nick Foles did wasn't important. I mean, the starting quarterback went down and the backup came in and did what he had to do. But they didn't win anything because of Nick Foles. And so how should they treat Carson Wentz? The way they treat Nick Foles. That's how they should treat Carson Wentz. The exact way they're treating Nick Foles is how Carson Wentz should be treated. I would love, in a strange world, I was discussing this with Lebitard, if somehow, now, listen, I'm not rooting for injury, but wouldn't it be more fascinating if Carson Wentz was playing and starting quarterback against the Eagles this weekend?
Oh, my gosh. What if he gets in the game? What if there's an injury? Can you imagine?
Remember Damon Ewart, 98-yard drive? Mahomes was out for a drive?
Gosh.
Yeah, he might. I mean,
Chad Henne?
Yeah. Oh, it was Chad Henne. That's right. Chad Henne. Yeah. I got my former Dolphin backups mixed up. I'm sorry.
All right, question for you.
Yep.
It looks like you have a section on our guy, Tony Baselli. To my knowledge, you and I have only ever hung out socially one time. And it was at Tony Baselli's Hall of Fame party.
Yeah, we had a good time.
It was great. We talked lacrosse, your daughters, my daughters, the whole deal.
I met your wife.
You met my wife, yes.
She was great.
It looks like you have a section on Tony Baselli. Are we taking people out of the Hall of Fame? What are we doing with the compiler chapter?
I have taken some people out of the Hall of Fame. With Tony Baselli, what I've always said about Baselli is even though his career was shortened by injury.
Right.
Okay. Tony Baselli was on an all-decade team. I think Tony only had like 6 or 7 really healthy seasons.
Yeah.
But those 6 or 7 healthy seasons, I think he probably was the best left tackle
He was.
that I've ever seen. He made an all-decade team.
Well, he was certainly better than, in my opinion, than the Paces or the Ogdens. I actually thought the best guy I saw was Walter Jones.
Oh, really?
Which, for whatever reason, Walter Jones and Baselli were the 2 best.
Right.
Pace and Ogden were unbelievable, but I was a big Walter Jones and Baselli guy.
So for me, and listen, I love Tony, and Tony's got a new job now. He's running the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's kind of cool. I think it's what Tony should be doing. I think Tony is. I think Tony's more than qualified to do that, and he cares about that. He cares about that place. He cares about that city. He cares about that organization. He cares about the family, the Khan family that owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. No one wants to get it right more so than Tony Baselli in Jacksonville because he loves the place. But Baselli, for me, I don't care that the career was shortened, okay? The 6 or 7 years he had, he was the best left tackle in the game. Jason Taylor used to tell me all the time, the guy that kept him up at night when he had to play him the next day was Tony Baselli, okay? And so Baselli, even though the career was shortened, to me was a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He's on an all-decade team, okay? He's one of the all-time greats, and the fact that he had to wait around to finally get into the Hall of Fame, to me is ludicrous. So
I got some other questions for you.
He's a first ballot Hall of Famer in my personal record book.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
But it sounds like you're not as into the guys that stick around for 15 to 20 years.
Compilers.
And compilers.
I don't like it. Like, what you do when you're done being at your best, I don't care for it. You're just tacking on stats.
Right.
For the sake of tacking on stats.
Right.
I don't want to remember Willie Mays or, I don't want to remember certain guys the way we tend to remember them. I want to remember them at their absolute peak, at the height of their powers. And so there are some guys that are classic compilers. They stuck around long enough to get 3,000 hits.
My thing is this, like, were you really great? You know what I mean? Like, were you the best of your people?
Right.
Were you really great?
Right.
And then were you really great long enough? And we can probably discuss how long enough is. Like, we can all agree 1 year is not okay.
Right.
But I would submit any guy 5+, like a Terrell Davis, Tony Baselli, if you were the best going and you were really great for 5+, that's probably enough for me.
I'm just listening to Patrick Mahomes in my ear right now. So.
Is he?
Yeah.
That was in my ear earlier.
Yes.
Maybe Jack, my producer, can help try to get Patrick Mahomes out of Stugatz's ear. I don't know how that keeps happening.
So I think you can you win one and be considered an all-time great? That's an interesting. Now, Marino hasn't won any, and yet I still maintain Marino is probably the best thrower of the football I've ever seen.
Okay. I got a great question for you.
Right?
Yes.
So it's just it's the way I view. It's just kind of the way I view sports. Like, rings are everything to me, but of the quarterbacks who don't have a ring, Dan Marino is by far the greatest of the quarterbacks who don't have a ring. And really, if I could just get myself past championships mean everything, if I could be honest with myself for a second, I'd probably tell you Dan Marino's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen, period, end of discussion.
All right, I got a question for you.
Yes.
I love this debate.
Okay.
You can be any athlete when they were in their prime.
Right.
Who would you pick?
Michael.
Yeah, see, so for me.
Who would you pick?
Dan Marino.
Why?
Can you imagine what it was like to be Dan Marino in Miami in the 80s? Can you imagine what – I'm not talking on the field, bro.
Right.
I'm talking off
I know
the
what you're
field.
talking about.
Can you imagine
No.
being Dan Marino during, like, Miami Vice and, like, everything that was going on in Miami?
Right. Ace Ventura.
Dan Marino, dude. You're Dan Marino for the Dolphins in the 80s. Like, sometimes.
Are you saying being Michael in the 90s in Chicago wasn't a good thing? I mean.
I think it was a good thing.
Okay,
I don't think
you're applying Miami and South Beach to your argument.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I'm applying some clientele. And also, there were different standards, I feel like, in the 80s than the 90s.
In what regard? You can get away with more in the 80s than you could in the 90s.
Yes, and there was also more concerns
Right.
Like people were like message boards were starting to pop up, and there was different things that could happen in the 90s. You know, Magic Johnson and like there was more. Probably more restrictions is probably
in the
best
90s,
way.
and then it got worse as we move forward with social media.
Although
right?
I don't know I don't know who the answer would be, like who the guy is in the 70s or who the guy
I would say Reggie Jackson maybe in the 70s.
Ooh, yes.
Right, that'd be a good one. Imagine that, New York hitting 3 home runs in a World Series game.
Yep.
Mr. October.
Yep.
I mean,
I guess maybe
the biggest
the answer's
brand
Wilt.
in New York, the biggest brand in sports, maybe.
But is the answer Wilt?
Well, I mean,
Wait,
we
way
all know
back
the
in the
answer is
day.
Wilt. Yeah, I mean, but in the I'm not applying what you're applying though. I'm just applying what it would be like to be a certain person at the height of their powers. And man, would I love to know what it feels like to be as good at something as Michael Jordan was at basketball.
Yeah.
You know? Because I know I ain't as good at this as Michael Jordan was at basketball. Right? No one's ever been as good at anything than Michael Jordan was at basketball. I want to know what that feels like.
Okay, I'm sure you talk about this a lot. How close do you think LeBron is to what Michael was?
Not even close.
Really?
No. LeBron's doing, speaking of compiling, that's what he's doing right now. How many years can I play? What are my averages, when I'm north of 40?
Yeah, but Jordan came back and played for the Wizards.
Yeah, but he had ownership in the Wizards. It was different. He had an ownership stake in the Wizards.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he had a small ownership. Jordan never should have left the Bulls. So, in my personal record book, Jordan won 8 titles. So I take titles away from Olajuwon. Okay.
Because Jordan was playing baseball.
Jordan won 3 straight. He took 2 years off.
Do we really know why he took the 2 years off?
I imagine it was gambling. I say that in the book. It's reckless, but that's what I imagine it to be.
Yeah.
Right? His father had passed away. But it's kind of like Mahomes, right? There are a bunch of quarterbacks right now who are great, all-time greats, who aren't going to win a Super Bowl. There's not enough years left. So like guys like Burrow and guys like Lamar Jackson and maybe Josh Allen and maybe Jalen Hurts, not all of these guys are going to win Super Bowls. Mahomes is hogging them all up. Jordan was hogging up all the rings. So he won the 3 straight, took the 2 years off, came back, won 3 more. In between those 3s, as you know, the Rockets won 2.
Yeah.
But do we really think the Rockets would have won 2 had Michael stayed in the league? Of course not. So
No.
I have a hard time watching seasons and watching a team. Like, I remember watching that Rockets team, and they were beating my Knicks team, right?
Yes.
And so I remember thinking to myself, okay, this is cool. Olajuwon's going to win a title. But this isn't the best team on the planet because the best player on the planet is in his prime, and he's not playing basketball right now. So Jordan has 8 consecutive titles in my personal record book. Olajuwon has none, and Kenny Smith never makes it to TNT. How about that?
I love the dot connecting there. The dot connecting there
Yes.
is incredible. Okay, I love that you love those Knicks teams.
Right.
I love those Knicks teams. Here is my thought, okay?
Yep.
Out of every guy I've ever seen that I wish would have played football,
Right.
Anthony Mason, and to a lesser extent, Charles Oakley.
Oh,
I used to
great.
get an argument with my buddies. This was during the heyday of Mike Tyson. I'm like, okay, Mike Tyson
Right.
or Anthony Mason with a baseball bat. Like in an alley, who are you
Wow.
taking? Mike Tyson or Anthony Mason? Can you imagine Anthony Mason playing like offensive tackle
I would take Tyson, by the way.
over Anthony Mason with a baseball bat?
I mean, Tyson was a trained killer, man, like a trained assassin.
He can't even punch. Anthony Mason's like 6'7". He's going to barely even be able to get his
He
fist
would
up
get
there.
that bat out of Anthony Mason's hand so quickly and then just start pummeling Anthony Mason in that alley. I mean, are you kidding me? Tyson would destroy.
I don't know,
We
man.
once asked George St. Pierre, me and Levitard, if I had a pool stick, we're at a bar, right? I had a pool stick and he had a pencil for some reason. That's all he had. I said, how long would it take you to kill me? And he said it would take him 14 seconds. And Dan asked him, why so long? And he said 2 seconds to get the pool stick out of his hands, and then 12 seconds to kill him with his pencil. And I'm like, what? Like, what? These guys, we do this with fighters. Like, they're fighters. I know Anthony Mason was big and intimidating, but he was big and intimidating to guys who were playing on a basketball court with him, not to Mike Tyson.
Right.
Right.
It's a good point.
Yes.
Is there any hope, by the way? Like,
No.
Why no. Why do you think the NFL is so popular. I know you guys on your show, you do every league, but why? Like, if it still feels like NFL's like this and NBA now, dude. I'm a Sixers fan. You don't even know when any of these guys are like Embiid and Paul George.
I know.
I gave up even turning the game on.
Well, that's why. I mean, that's part of the problem, right? You go to an NBA game, you have no idea if your favorite player is going to play, right? You're taking your kids to an NBA game. If you're a Sixers fan, you have no idea if Joel Embiid's going to suit up that night. You have no idea if you're going out to L.A. You're a Clipper fan. You're taking your kid if Kawhi Leonard's going to suit up that night. And so that's a massive, massive problem for the NBA. And I say that on a weekend where they won the weekend with the Luka Doncic trade.
Yeah, but that's the only time I ever see on my Twitter timeline.
Is the transaction?
Right? Yeah, is a transaction
right.
or a guy not playing.
Right. Let's be honest.
It's never about hey, did you see this play that a guy had last night, or he had 38 points?
Right.
It's only the that's the interesting part of the NBA is the transaction.
So let's be honest. If they did a Radio Row for the NBA Finals, no one would show up, right? No one would want to go. Meaning the sports media, right? We're not showing up like this the way we are for this. So I think there's a lot of factors, Russ. I think there's the NFL. It's one day a week. I know Thursday, but they own a day of the week.
Sunday.
Right? There's 17 of these things. They're special. Every weekend is special.
Right. The red zone's unbelievable.
Guys, the red zone is incredible. And it's kind of the exact opposite of the NBA, where Patrick Mahomes is going to do everything he can to make sure he's on the field on Sunday for every single game. And you're not confident that Jimmy Butler is going to do the same thing for the Miami Heat. Right. And so that's a big problem. So I think it's the 17 games. They own a day of the week. It's on the weekend. And the other sports, it's 82 games. It's 162. It's too much. I just think it's too much. I think the NFL has perfected it. And if they go to 18, we'll be there for it as well. They can't go too much further though than 18. We're starting to get a little bit carried away.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Right.
All right,
keep them special, man. You got to keep them special. Don't you agree?
For sure.
Yes.
And I think college is getting into a dicey thing a little bit.
Very
with that
dicey.
Too.
Very dicey.
I think college and that's.
So I think college had it exactly right. I thought their regular season was the perfect regular season because they had weekends where you felt like you were watching de facto playoff games.
Yes.
If this team loses, they're out.
Right.
Right. You don't have that anymore. They stripped us of the Ohio State, Michigan is supposed to mean you don't get to win the national championship if you lose that game.
I have a question.
What?
I don't know if it's in the book because you just did it. Do you take away Ohio State's national championship? Because they lost 2 games, including losing to Michigan.
No, the Ohio
home
State
in the last game.
The Ohio State national championship that I actually did take away in my personal record book is the one against the Canes.
Why?
Well, do you remember that
McGahee
one?
Got hurt?
Yeah. Do you remember that game?
Yeah. Is that why? Because
Miami thought they won the game. They were on the field celebrating, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a flag comes on the field, and Ohio State ends up winning the game. I mean,
that's right.
Yes. Remember that?
Hey, it's called Stugatz's personal record book.
Right.
He's all over the Dan Le Batard show with Stugatz. He wrote a book. It's incredible.
Look at the people who wrote on the back there. Joe Buck.
Dwight Freeney, Adam Schefter, Diana Rossini, Marty Smith, Dan Patrick.
Yeah, DP.
I got to check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, let's dive into the news. But first, those of you that follow me on social media, you know how much I love the Game Time app. You know that I used the Game Time app to get tickets a couple weeks ago to Post Malone, Jelly Roll. That was awesome, even though it was raining the whole time. I don't care. I'm not going to let that dampen my fun. Not when I got great tickets thanks to Game Time app, where they have last-minute deals where you can save up to 60% off. These people are looking to unload their tickets late, right? Oh, I don't want to go. I can't go. That's when you scoop them up. You got the all-in pricing. You can see what the view is from the seat, and the lowest price guarantee is awesome. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code ROSS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, make sure you create that account, redeem code ROSS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so far from my Labatt merch, because of all the Labatt I get, I've gotten the fridge, the mini fridge, which is incredible. Just like the blue light is awesome. And the backpack cooler, which, gosh, I wish I had that 20, 30 years ago. You want to talk about coming in clutch. Buy beer, get gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com to sign up.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, biggest note, the Broncos, they signed running back J.K. Dobbins.
Well, he's had such an interesting career. He's had a couple of really nice seasons, and unfortunately, he's never really been able to capture that lifelong financial security because of the injuries. So, he was right to probably hold out when he did from the Ravens a couple of years ago, but wasn't able to get the money. It's just unfortunate because he's a guy whose talent and work ethic should have been able to be able to make more than this. The Broncos obviously already have some other running backs, but they just want to make sure, look, he's a good player. Why not have another one?
Raiders, they signed longtime Bengals linebacker Jermaine Pratt.
That didn't take long, huh? I mean, it feels like Jermaine Pratt's agent must have been talking with teams and telling them, hey, look, he's going to get released at some point if nobody trades for him. The Bengals squatted on his rights for a long time. You could say, hey, that's what was best for the team, or you can say it's a little disrespectful for a guy that's done as much as he did. Either way, he pounced on the Raiders, or the Raiders pounced on him very, very quickly. Time to finish this episode strong right after this. You guys know I'm passionate about a bunch of things, right? Obviously football, obviously food. How about friends and family and doing things with them, doing things together? That is what Smirnoff's all about. We do game days, even in the off season. Right, I told you all football season that there's no I in football, it's a we thing. Guess what? Get together these weekends. Get together with friends in the summer before football starts. Get your routine going. So great to be by a pool, or maybe you're at a vacation location. It's amazing. Smirnoff is the perfect vodka for crafting delicious cocktails, easy to make, versatile for any and all fans over 21. So you just grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer, head to Smirnoff.com, find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff, number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. I got some winners, by the way, this week, Jack. Those of you that go the extra mile, I saw that comment at Ross Tucker Pod on Instagram, Carson Wheeler. You're a winner. Or Ben Sampson, use the code Ross to get Warren Sharp's book at Sharp Football, and then the youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL shout out. That goes to Bill Hicks. Make sure you email me, ross@rosstucker.com, and let me know your preference for a press pass so I can send that to you guys. Other than that, have a terrific weekend. You can catch up on all the other shows, Even Money, Fantasy Feast, College Draft, the next few days. We'll be back bright and early on Monday. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. I mentioned it during the show for a reason, because it's the best Father's Day gift. And yes, you can still order one today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. You can still order it, even if it doesn't arrive in time. Say, hey, Dad, I'm having a story professionally written about how amazing you are. Think about how crazy that would sound to your dad. He would love it. myfrontpagestory.com. The other businesses that we like to give shout outs to because they are patrons of ours. How about backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing. I was there last week. They're all, I think we're done here, members of patreon.com/Ross Tucker. I think we're done here.